Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Darko Audio Podcast. Joining me once again from Ireland is Srajan Ebaen.
Hi, John.
And today, Srajan, I can't even say your name now. Today, Srajan, we are once again looking at some new stuff in the hi-fi world, but going beyond the press release. And as is customary, I'm going to start because it's publisher's privilege.
Correct. It's your channel.
This episode is brought to you by AudioQuest. The cable company believes great audio performance begins with great power. Visit audioquest.com for more information.
And I would like to talk about a CD player, which is strictly old school for some people and very, very much sort of up to the moment with other people. This new one comes from Shanling. It's only been announced this week, I believe. It's called the CD80 Mark II. So it's the successor to the CD80. I did look up the CD80, and one complaint about the original CD80 was quite severe, I think, actually, and quite justified, was that apparently in some situations it didn't play gaplessly, which I think is an absolute no-no. I don't know about you. I think it's just... no.
Well, especially with CD, it's a little bit bizarre, isn't it?
Well, it suggests to me that the CD player is ripping the CD into separate files,
right,
and then playing those files out of a buffer. And then when you play files out of a buffer, if you've only got a single thread process doing it, you have to finish the end of one track before you can start the next, which causes a gap. So I think it's all tied in with the mechanisms used. I think a lot of cheap CD players, like at $300 with slots on the front, because the original CD80 was a slot drive. When you see a slot, you need to ask the question, is it a CD-ROM drive? I think that's a reasonable question for customers to ask the manufacturer or the dealer or whatever. If the dealer doesn't know, walk away, because I had one for, I think it was from Project, and I don't think that was gapless. That was a slot. Anyway, the CD80 Mark II is a tray. So that suggests to me that it's not a CD ripper. And Shanling have already come out of the gate and said this definitely plays gaplessly. And there's a USB-A socket on the front, so you can plug in your USB storage device, your thumb drive or your hard drive, and you can play files from that. And apparently that playback is gapless too. There is a but with this, because to play those files with that feature, you have to use Shanling's Edict app, EDDICT. Now, I had to use that once to put the ET3 CD transport onto my network. And I got to say, it was not a fun experience. The app, I don't love it at all. So I would suggest to you, if you're looking at this CD player and thinking, it's just streaming from hard drives, look at the Edict app first, because it might not be to your taste. It definitely isn't to mine. I'm glad I only had to use it to onboard my transport, and then I'm out. I didn't ever want to see that thing again. But the other thing about this CD player, and I think this is why I'm talking about it today, well, there's two reasons. It's a tray, but it's also head-fi focused to some degree. So on the front, it's got a 3.5mm headphone socket, but also a 4.4mm balanced headphone socket. And now I don't think that's very common when it comes to CD players. You don't see many with a balanced headphone socket on the front. Correct. I can't remember. It's not the most powerful in the world, but I think it will be okay for most people with most headphones. So you get up to 850 milliwatts into 32 ohms from the balanced 4.4 socket. And it's also compatible with IEMs, because IEMs tend to be a much lower impedance, and you want the output impedance of your headphone socket to be at least 1/8 or lower, 1/8 of the input impedance of your earphones. So if your earphones are like 10 ohms, you really want to see an output impedance on the headphone socket of, I guess, 1/8, so like less than 1.2 ohms. Now, this apparently has a less than 1 ohm headphone impedance output, so it should be good for most IEMs. So they've obviously thought about that. Now, Shanling, we know they make portable players and they make CD players, so they're probably just bringing two worlds together here. This thing also has a Bluetooth input, which is kind of unusual, but I guess it's becoming more standard nowadays on entry-level products like this. It's obviously got the RCAs out on the back, so you can connect it to a normal hi-fi system, use it as a normal CD player. It does not have Toslink out, but it does have coax out if you want to connect it to an external DAC. And you can also use it as a preamp because it's got a volume control on the front.
Which it needs for the headphone already.
Yes, exactly that. Yeah. So I don't know how good that preamp is going to sound, but it might be okay for some affordable little powered speakers on a desk or something like that, right? So it's probably good for purpose, but if you're going to connect it to a high-end audio system, it's probably going to get found out because it's probably a passive preamplifier on the back. It's probably just a volume attenuator and that's it. There's no gain added. But this is quite a tidy package, I think, for the price, because the price is $359 US, which is, you know, it's up there with your sort of entry-level Marantz or Denon. I know that Onkyo are bringing a new CD player to market later this year, but I haven't written about anything that Onkyo has announced this year because they announced it back at CES in January. They announced a new power amplifier, I think a streamer, I think a preamp, and I think an integrated. But the message was, well, these aren't going to be ready until October. I'm thinking, I'm not covering something that's being announced, like 10 months out. That's just madness. But
Now, this Shanling CD player, is it full size or is it like a 3/4 or half size thing?
Yeah, it's a 3/4.
Okay.
3/4 width. So it's probably okay for a desktop. So if you're into CDs and you've got enough space on your desktop for a 3/4 width component, you plunk it down and you're off to the races, and it's not a crazy amount of money. I think it's probably going to be cheaper than getting a DAC headphone amp and then a transport. Unless, I know a lot of people swear by, $50 Blu-ray players, but I think where they fall over is their build quality. A $50 Blu-ray player, I don't know, it might sound as good as a transport, but it might not, I don't know. But the build quality aren't great on those things. I don't think the Shanling is going to have, the build quality of a far more expensive CD player, but I think it's going to be okay. So, yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to use a follow-up of a previous podcast we did as a jumping off place to the real news announcement.
Okay.
So the jumping off place, we're going to take a look at the virtual hi-fi Viper, which, if our audience remembers, was this Polish compact speaker with a 3D printed cabinet.
Right, yes, yep.
Okay, so we are showing it in yellow. There's a number of colors available. And then we're now showing for the first time the back panel. Mm-hmm. And tell me what you see there. And tell me what you think might be a little unusual.
Yeah, so I'm seeing 3 binding posts. So a normal pair with a plus and a minus, and they're labeled 4 ohm nominal. So that's obviously for an amplifier. But then there's also a third one that's labeled amp plus 80 hertz. So I'm going to guess that this is low pass filtered subwoofer.
Close.
Or is it for like a external crossover?
Close. What do you see? What do you see in the next picture of the crossover? Anything that draws your eye?
I'm seeing Mundorf. Is it Mundorf caps? Mm-hmm. No, you've stumped me, Srajan, completely.
Hooray.
Okay.
Well, the first unusual thing about the crossover is the size of that big capacitor. That's a 220 microfarad capacitor.
It's pretty big.
Why would you need such a big capacitor? And by the way, this is an expensive part. This one part costs more than a lot of smaller speakers have in their drivers combined. So if we go back up to that amp plus 80 hertz, this is a high pass, not a low pass.
Okay.
It's an 80 hertz high pass.
Oh, I see. So you plug your speaker cables into the red termination of your speaker cable into one or the other. So if you want to high pass your mains, because I assume this is a little two-way, right? Mm-hmm. You can without having the amp to filter it.
Correct. Now, why would you want to do that?
Well, if you are attaching a subwoofer to your amp, the advantage of high passing a two-way stand mount when you've got a subwoofer in play is that you take away some of the demand placed on the amp to pull bass from the speaker, because it's only working, in this case, I would assume 80 hertz and above.
Correct.
Right?
But so if we make this little speaker no longer see 20 hertz to 80 hertz, which is 2 octaves.
Yep.
For each octave that we go lower, if we want the same amplitude, the same loudness, all the way from the treble all the way down into the bass, each octave that we go lower requires 4 times the driver excursion than the octave above. So if we take out 2 octaves, we are removing 8 times the stroke demand, which is how far the driver has to go out, because it's a small driver trying to do bass. It has to push a lot of air. So we take that away from the driver. We reduce distortion related to speed and to stoppage. And if we are playing loud, bass-heavy music, not just for 1 minute with the occasional peak, but let's say we play techno, and there's a constant beat going on, and we're playing an hour worth of that. And the longer we play, the hotter the voice call gets of this driver, of this little woofer. And as the voice call temperature goes up, the resistance of that driver goes up. Right. And as the resistance of the driver goes up, we have dynamic compression. And this is why a lot of times as you play a system for a long time, it starts to sound more and more bright in the top end. And that is because the bass is starting to compress, but the tweeter is not compressing. So the relative balance between the treble and the mid-range and the bass is now being skewed. Now suddenly the treble is too high because the bass no longer tracks the input signal. It's compressing. And so that's the advantage, that if you high pass the speaker so it no longer even sees any bass signal, you reduce the stroke demands and anything to do with that, and you reduce thermal stress, which also benefits distortion lowering.
Yeah.
And the reason this came about, because last time I talked about the speaker, it did not yet have this feature, is that the designer likes to play loud. And when I say loud, I mean in all capitals, loud. And his room is not that small. It's 40 square meters. And he likes a lot of synthetic bass.
Okay.
That goes really loud and really, really low. And he realized that he could overdrive this speaker. Like he could basically hit the stops. And then he thought, well, wait a minute. Srajan keeps talking about you have an outboard crossover, you have an outboard subwoofer.
Yeah.
And then he said, well, why don't I build this in? Because a lot of subwoofers don't have a high pass. Or if they do, it will be of very low quality. So he built it in, and he explained that the reason why you see this so rarely in a two-way speaker is because that part required to do it is very big and very expensive, and you do not want an electrolytic capacitor, because now all the signal that comes out of the midwoofer from 80 all the way up to, let's say, 2 kilohertz has to go through this one part. And if that part is of inferior quality, the majority of your sound will suffer. So now we move this away.
Okay.
And we go to the real news item, which is a new company I just found out about yesterday. They are called CoLinear Acoustics. Out of the UK. They're apparently serving the pro and the consumer market. And their first model is called the DSP-8C. Now, based on the name, what do we think that might be? DSP-8C.
Well, I already know because I got the same email. So this is an external crossover box, right?
It can be used that way, and that's why I want to feature it.
Okay.
It basically is an 8-channel DAC with a volume control. So now it becomes a variable DAC, or basically a digital preamplifier, right? But it's got 8 channels. And it's got a USB input, and it's got coax and toslink in, and coax and toslink out. Mm-hmm. And then it got analog output, 8 of them, on both XLR and RCA.
Yeah.
Now comes the unusual thing. This might be primarily for power users. This is very heavy on DSP.
Yes.
It has a browser-based interface to access the interface. And you have FEAR filters, you have IRR filters that work up to 192 kilohertz at 24-bit. And you can EQ things. And what I want to talk about is that you can use it as a crossover. You can use it as a 3-way crossover that would take care of 6 channels plus 2 subwoofers. But that gets too complicated for me, and I think for most in our audience. What most of us would probably use this for is as an outboard crossover to add a subwoofer.
Yes.
And so in this image that shows the filter choices we have, Bessel, Butterworth, Chebyshev 1, Chebyshev 2, and Linkwitz-Riley. Those are the types of filters, or what they call it the shape. We can set the frequency. We can set the steepness or the shallowness of the slope. From first order, I would assume it goes up to 24 dB because they show that per octave. Possibly goes even higher. You can set gain. You can set phase. And even more interestingly, this you can only do in a digital crossover, delay.
Very powerful for subwoofers, yeah.
You can set delay between the different channel, and you can assign each channel whether it outputs on RCA or XLR. You can mute each channel, so you can actually track what your adjustments are doing. You have remote control for the volume. And now comes the best part. The introductory price right now, in pounds, UK, is $9.95. It's not cheap, but we're not talking 3,000 and up for a lot of the analog crossovers that we can buy. And the sophistication of the interface, at least based on what they show on the website. Now, I just only found out about this yesterday. I haven't talked to anybody there yet, so I'm basically just using information that they have put out. It looks to me like a very sophisticated piece of kit that can be used by average consumers that just want to punch in 80 hertz or 70 hertz or 60 hertz crossover frequency, decide on the slope and the gain, and be done. And power users can do a whole lot more, including room correction. But since there is no automated room correction, so there's not a microphone that measures everything and like Dirac then does its own adjustments, you would actually have to go in there and know what you're doing to notch things out.
I mean, I looked at this yesterday and thought this is a power user's product. I couldn't see like sort of general. I don't know. Like the majority of the our audience would not want to use this. I don't think. I'm not saying it doesn't have appeal, but for the right customer, it absolutely does. So somebody who knows what they're doing with crossover design, say between a pair of stand mounts and a sub, sure. But it looks pretty daunting. Even for me, I think this looks reasonably daunting. I'm sure I could, fumble my way through it with some help, but yeah, I don't know. To me, I think it's a power user's product. Very powerful though.
I see it also appealing for basic consumers because all you really need to do is go in there and say Linkwitz-Riley, which is the most common crossover used in subwoofers. You put in 80 or 70 or 60 hertz, and you adjust the gain if you have to adjust the gain there. Otherwise, you just do it on the subwoofer.
Yeah.
Right? The only thing you're using this whole thing for is those two things. You set the frequency and you set the slope. And then if you want to mess around with the delay, why might you want to do that? Let's say your main speakers are 3 meters away from the front wall. You park the subwoofer in the corner because that's where it looks best. that subwoofer is now delayed because
Yep.
it's 3 meters further back. You can now delay the main speakers so the subwoofer catches up. You can do this by ear or you can measure. But if you just do that and nothing else whatsoever, and you have a ESS Sabre 9039 DAC built in, and you have a volume control, which at the moment I don't know whether that's Sabre's on-chip digital attenuator or is that analog. I doubt it's analog because it would have to be 8-channel. That gets pretty complicated and expensive. So it's probably a digital 32-bit based or 64-bit based volume control. But I think if you look at it that way and you get rid of all of the other features, which are, I agree, for power users, I think then even the average consumer could be drawn to this.
So I guess, therefore, from what we've just said, Srajan, I think what we might suggest to CoLinear Acoustics is that they produce a little booklet that specifically targets beginners who just want to use this to cross over a subwoofer. Just like a real kind of simple startup guide so that they don't get lost in the weeds. Because I look at this, I'm looking at the screenshots that you've put up, and we'll obviously be showing these in the video. And obviously we won't be showing those on the audio version of this podcast. Sorry, there's not much we can really do about that. But it's quite a daunting interface. When you first see it, you go, oh my goodness. So if there is a very concise beginner's guide, that might help it make a bridge to sort of, I won't say mum and dad consumers, but like beginner audio folk who just want to, I just want to integrate my subwoofer.
Correct.
I tell you what's interesting, actually, like you mentioned subwoofer delay coming from putting the sub in the corner. One thing you can do with WIM software now is it will analyze your speakers and your sub and work out what the time delay is between the two using your phone, right? And I've done this a couple of times now, and even though my sub is sitting in front slightly of my speakers, the WIM app tells me that the sub is between 2 and 6 milliseconds delayed. I say between because when the first time I did it, it said 2 milliseconds, and then we shot some B-roll with all AF on Saturday, and it went, oh no, it's 6 milliseconds. So I don't really know where the truth is until you can use the manual slider to hear where it sort of like thwumps into place. But
that is probably the digital delay, the latency of the sub's own DSP.
Maybe, but I remember we had a discussion about this when the KC62 from KEF came out, and I did speak to Jack Ockley-Brown about it, and he said that the DSP delay in that sub will be a millisecond at most.
Okay.
So what I'm saying is that you don't have to just have the sub behind your speakers to necessarily...
Just have a time delay.
Yeah, right. I mean, it could be somewhere else. And I'm not saying this based upon WIM's automatic analysis, because I've used the manual slider to work out where it sounds best. I think it sounds best at 2 milliseconds. I don't think the 6 millisecond measurement was correct. I think the first one was, the second one not, because I went back and went with the manual slider. 2 milliseconds sounded best to my ears. 6
now
milliseconds.
Let me ask you, what do you mean by best? In other words, our audience, how would they know when it is right?
So
without any measurement.
Yeah, no, I mean, the way I listen for it is I've already used this word, right? It's like what I'm listening for when I'm moving this slider that adjusts the delay on, it's actually adjusting the delay on the speakers, not on the sub, because it wants to compensate, right? Is I'm listening for where everything sort of thwumps into place. So what I heard when I left it at 6 milliseconds, because all AF left and I left it on at 6 milliseconds, and I played some music and I thought, this does not sound right. It just sounds like the bass is knocking a little bit behind everything else, right? It's like it's knocking on the floor from below, and it just sounds like that. It's just not quite together. And then when I slide it into place, yeah, it just seems to kind of go together, so it doesn't seem like there's two distinct boxes in play. You can hear it. You can hear when there's two separate sound sources working a room, right? And then when you get the delay right, everything just seems to sort of lock into place. It sounds like one single source and not oh, there's the speaker sound and there's the sub sound. I guess what I'm getting at here, as I'm talking, I can hear myself saying this, is that the sub stands out when it's not, well, when the speakers are not aligned time-wise with it. You can hear it on its own, right? Just a little bit behind when everything else is going on. And when you've got the delay setting correct, you can't really hear where it ends and the speakers take over. It just seems like one unit. But I've only learnt that from just experience, mainly with the Room Perfect stuff from Lingdorf, and just messing around with the delay in their software over time, just playing some very bass-heavy dub music over and over again. I mean, I've ruined the track by doing that, but it has allowed me to work out what I think is the best setting for me, and that's where everything kind of comes into place. So I think that having some kind of, well, it's not a subwoofer delay, it's a speaker delay setting, isn't it? That kind of delay setting is incredibly powerful. To me, it's just as important as the crossover.
And so, here would be a technical explanation of what's going on. And this has to do with harmonics. So if we have a bass note, let's say at 80 hertz, right? The first harmonic is 1 octave higher, is at 160.
Yep.
And then the fourth harmonic is another octave higher, which is at 320 hertz. So the 160 may already be beyond the subwoofer's coverage.
Yes.
Right? And the 320 most certainly is behind the subwoofer's coverage. Now this is like one note at 80 hertz, which has all of these harmonics on top of it. And they should all happen at the same time.
Right, okay, I see what you mean, yeah.
So if the harmonics reach our ear before the fundamental, right, because the fundamental is hanging, it's arriving just slightly too late.
That's the right word. It's a hanging bass. It's like hanging behind. And in Australia, we call it lollygagging.
Yeah, and anything that hangs is by definition late. And anything that is late is by definition slow. So slow bass isn't really a myth, but it has nothing to do with that low frequencies travel slower than high frequencies. In this case, it just means there is a slight time delay.
Right. Yeah. I mean, when I discovered that setting in the Lingdorf Room Perfect software, I was blown away by how powerful it is in terms of influencing what I hear in the seat. I couldn't believe it, actually. I thought, this is transformative in terms of integrating a sub. And what I like about it is it means I've got more latitude with sub placement.
Correct.
So I can bring it further forward or push it further back and then adjust the speaker delay in the app accordingly, which is why I'm very happy that Wim has it as well, which, I wasn't going to go there today, but I think I might actually. I think a lot of hi-fi, Srajan, now, especially with the advent of Wim, Eversolo at the entry level, and products like this as well, is that hi-fi is becoming more, and I know a lot of people won't like this, it's becoming more computer-based in that I see hi-fi products now, like the Wim and the Eversolo, as a computer with one hell of a lot of DSP power inside with an amplifier and a DAC attached. Or just a DAC attached, right? It's almost like the priorities have shifted, which I don't think is necessarily a bad thing, especially at the entry level, because getting your sub integrated and integrated nicely is more important than the DAC performance or the amplifier performance, generally speaking. I know you can get better amps and whatever, but I think having a really good 2.1 system driven by a system that might be fronted with a preamp like this one offers more to the end user than just, I guess, traditional hi-fi components.
And the thing that I want to stress, which is inherent in what you just said, is that delay is really only possible in the digital domain.
Right.
I asked an engineer why, and he explained to me just how many analog parts you would have to serialize to generate just a little bit of delay. It's basically not possible to do in the analog domain. My own crossover, I have two for two systems, is analog.
Right.
So it's purest. But the one thing that it can't do is build in the delay. So I have to use physical
Yes.
for or back movement. And I can get away with it because I'm an audiophile and I have a dedicated sound room.
Yes.
But if I had a family, I couldn't put a subwoofer in the middle of the room. It just wouldn't work.
Right.
And that's
Yeah.
why I think that this particular product by CoLinear or something like it has real appeal once you get over this hurdle of, my God, all these knobs and sliders. Well, disregard them because you don't need them.
Right.
You only really need 3 channels out of the 8. 5 of them you're never even going to look at.
Which is why they need to produce this entry-level beginner's guide. Okay. Shall we do the collaborative one now?
By all means.
All right. So I don't know how I discovered this actually. I think I was just looking on Amazon for stuff. Or maybe, I know what it was. I bought the FIO SR11 little network streamer to use with the R2R DAC, right? And now when you do, so obviously I bought something that's Chinese and it's affordable, it's in the hi-fi category on Amazon. And then Amazon wants to serve you like, oh, you might like this or you might like this. And one of those products was a hi-fi rack from a company who has the most bizarre name.
That's why I'm letting you start, because
Right.
I have no idea how to pronounce it.
Well, I just see it as FitUEyes. So it's fit and then a capital U and then eyes, as in the things we see with, right? So FitUEyes. And the reason it caught my eye was A, the price, but also the industrial design, because I thought it looked very stylish for something that sells for not much more than $100. Because normally hi-fi racks that sell for $100, $200 look terrible. They look awful. But somebody's actually taken some time with the industrial design here to make it so that it leans back. Well, it doesn't lean backwards, but the shelves are tapered backwards. So that the 2 front supporting rods do lean backwards towards the rear. And then at the rear, you've got these kind of other supporting, I guess, metal rods. And then in between, you've got 4 shelves. And I think they're wood laminate. They're not going to be anything other than that at this price. But I thought this was really interesting. So I wrote about it on my website just because I thought my audience would love to see something as attractive as this for a price like this, especially as the top and bottom shelves each support 50 kilos, which is substantial.
Very.
It's funny, actually, because I don't know whether Amazon is listening to my conversations and my emails, but I just asked Solid Steel to send me a new hi-fi rack, even though I was trying to get away from hi-fi racks. But because I've got all these monster amps here now, like the big Marantz, I've also got a big Rotel, I've got something else that's crazy heavy. I just couldn't, there's no way to put them. Like on my USM Hala, it's not really deep enough and I worry about the weight. So I've got them to send me a new rack. So I would have bought one of these on the spot had they not sent me that, even though theirs is probably, well, how much is theirs? It's about $500 or $600. And it doesn't look as sort of mid-century modern designed as this FitUEyes one. It definitely looks more utilitarian. It's got wheels, which is why I love it. I love everything on wheels. But yeah, this FitUEyes rack, I would have bought one had I not just got this. It literally arrived the same day as I discovered this. But I thought I'm going to write about this because I thought that's interesting. There are obviously 2 racks in the middle that can be adjusted up and down ever so slightly within the structure. I think there's a place for like a power adapter on the back, but I know you're going to blow that out of the water for me in a moment. Because you bought one, you saw my article and you bought one, right?
Correct.
Right. So over to you on this then, Srajan, because you've got hands-on.
This was is for my smaller upstairs room, which is 4 meters by 8, and I'm listening on the long axis.
Right.
So the speakers are on the short wall, and I have the amplifiers and the crossover between or behind the speakers. Mm-hmm. And I got my source stack on the right side wall next to my seat, because I'm starting out with that little FIO R7 that you also have.
Yep.
And that's basically my interface, so that has to be close where I can actually reach it. Mm-hmm. So I wanted a rack that wouldn't stick out too far from the side wall, because the room is narrow. And I have a carpet or a rug, and the rug doesn't go all the way to the wall. There's a certain amount of clearance between the wall and the rug, and I wanted a rack that fits in there precisely. And all the audiophile racks are much bigger than they need to be. They have these monstrously big frames, and they anticipate really, really deep gear, so they give you all of this extra space, and they are bloody expensive.
They are, yeah.
So when I saw this, I hoofed over to the website. I saw that they had a finish that I like, which is white with a blonde fake wood. And I measured it, and it looked like it would fit precisely, like perfectly, which it did. Now, they did one thing that they don't show on the website. They changed the design. They made it better. What we see on the website is, as you describe, is the metal bars that lean back. The shelves are trapezoid, so they are wider in the front than they are in the rear, so they sort of angle in. And then in the rear, we had two MDF slats with a little gap in between.
Ah, they're MDF, okay. Right.
That was serving as basically a spine, like a rear support.
Yes.
Yeah, it's MDF, and then they have a 4-wood composite, you call it a laminate, on top.
Yeah.
Okay. They replaced those back MDF slats with a much, much thinner metal frame.
Oh, that'll be stronger for sure. Yeah.
It's stronger.
Yeah.
But it also leaves more open space. So if you wanted to use those slats to sort of disguise what you call cable vomit,
Yes.
now you no longer have that sort of
You can't
visual
do it.
barrier, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Now this is the item
So you're holding up something. Oh, okay.
that we were talking about before. This is what they consider to be a little holder that previously you would bolt to those rear slats, and now you could stick in a power bar, either this way or that way, plug all of your components in, and this would no longer sit on the floor.
Right.
But now that they replaced those rear slats, this thing no longer fits. It's unusable.
Right. So it's basically an L-shaped bracket.
It's an L-shaped bracket. But this also shows you the quality of the metal uprights. They are hollow. They're not solid. But they're just like that. Mine are painted white.
So nitpickers might say, okay, hollow slats or hollow supports or hollow uprights will ring, with sound in the room, which is probably true. But at this kind of price, are you really going to complain about that?
Well, I actually did that. And you hear a sound, but it doesn't ring. It's not like bing. It's just like
okay.
Talk.
Okay.
Now, we are not going to mention or go into the weeds with sonic improvements from a rack. However,
it upsets too many people.
However, if you wanted to, which is what I did, this rack comes with 4 rubber bumpers on what looks like M8 threads. Well, you can take those M8 rubber bumpers out and replace them with isolators of your choice, which is exactly what I did.
Right. Yeah.
What the difference between a sort of a piece of furniture and a hi-fi rack is that the hi-fi rack isolates the rack from the floor. And that's, I think, the primary ingress point for vibrations. Our speakers are the generators of most of the vibrations in the room, especially a subwoofer. You couple those speakers to the floor, there's vibrations going to the floor, that goes right back up into your rack and potentially can infect your hi-fi gear. So if you want to disrupt that traffic, you isolate your speakers. You put them on some kind of isolators, not spikes, but isolators or decouplers. If for some reason there's still some vibration leaking, which could be the case with a really powerful subwoofer and a suspended floor, then you now may want to get your rack off the floor. And so you use the same kind of isolators there. And so now you can take a rack that sells for 129 euros, that includes 29 euros of VAT, by the way, and then I paid an extra 30 euros DPD shipment from a German warehouse to Ireland, so it cost me 159 euros. It's basically IKEA ware. It ships flat packed.
Yeah.
It has to be assembled. Very, very easy. But unlike IKEA, it's designed for audio, for hi-fi in particular. But it makes no pretensions whatsoever on improving your sound.
No.
If you believe that a rack can make a difference, okay, add your isolators at the bottom. And if now you have a super fancy turntable on top, and you live in an inner city, in a high-rise, and each time the lorry drives by down below, you can feel the building shaking, and maybe your turntable skips. Okay, now put some isolators between the turntable and the top shelf. Problem solved. So now you have a high-performance audiophile rack with the isolation benefits, but you only spent IKEA-level money.
I think what I like about this is it actually looks more like a normal piece of furniture that wouldn't upset non-audiophile members of the family too much, or as much as traditional hi-fi racks. I mean, I'm always torn about traditional hi-fi racks because if I've got I've got that big Rotel CD player, the Mishi Q5, which is very big, it's very deep,
and it's
heavy. And it would not fit on this FitUEyes thing at all. It's just too wide and too deep. And also it needs top shelf placement because it's top loader. So I think hi-fi rack companies are very good at making furniture for people who have these big components. They have many of them, or they're very utilitarian. One thing that hi-fi rack companies, the puzzle they've yet to solve, as far as I can tell, is what you mentioned earlier, is the cable vomit that comes down the back. Because it looks like it's raining cables from each shelf downwards. And that drives me crazy more than the aesthetics of the shelf itself. So I've had several from the UK's hi-fi racks who are no longer, I don't think they're in business anymore. The solid steel stuff I really like because it's simple, it's black. I've got one in Portugal, got one here now. And it's great when I get the big Marantz flagship pieces in. I need it for that because they weigh over 30 kilos. I can't be putting that on my IKEA Backboarder. I've even got a Zara home shelf. It's just not deep enough. It wouldn't support it. I would worry that it would just collapse the shelf during the night or something. I don't know. So yeah, I think hi-fi racks are good for a certain part of the segment of the market. But I think what FitUEyes here are doing is tackling people who've just got a little Cambridge audio amplifier and they've maybe got a turntable and that's it. And they do want that sort of mid-century modern look or something that would fit with that. And yeah, that doesn't sell for an absolute fortune. I think this ticks all the boxes, which is why I wrote about it. So 180 euros on Amazon UK for because there's a special version, isn't there? The one that has LED strip lights on the back. Right. Which I think it's a bit cheesy, but I understand that some people like that. But I think actually when I looked on Amazon.com, it was 109 euros shipped. I just thought, how are they doing this? A great product.
Well, there's another invisible feature that is really neat, which is that the reason why the top and the bottom shelf have a 50 kilo load rating and the two in the middle are only at 20 kilos is that the ones on top and the bottom are supported by metal.
Yep.
The ones in the middle are bolted in from the rear with really long bolts.
Yeah.
But in the front, to not show any bolt holes in the metal uprights, there's L brackets.
Okay.
Right? That we bolt into the uprights, but then the shelf is just resting on this metal bracket. Well, because it's only resting on the metal bracket very loosely, you can actually stick in headphone hangers. You don't have to bolt them in, they just stick in, and the weight of the component on the shelf makes sure that those metal hangers don't fall out, which is why on the photos I sent you of my install, there is a headphone hanger on either side of the rack. Works perfectly. And we should also say that this is available in, I believe, at least 4 different finishes.
It is, yeah.
Like black.
Yeah.
I have the white with the blonde wood. Then there's a gray or anthracite, something like that. And there's at least one more.
Yeah.
And on that subject of price, I wanted to cover this just a little bit because, yes, there is child labor. There's sweatshops. There's whole cities that are basically factories where people work 14-hour days. So I know that abuse exists. And hopefully that's not the case here. But I think that we in the West don't really know what most of the consumables that we buy cost to make. Because when I look at this rack and I realize that even though it's shipped from a German warehouse, it wasn't made in Germany. I can't be sure that it was made in China. It could have been made in Indonesia. It could have been made in Vietnam. But it's certainly made overseas where there's cheap labor.
Yes.
Okay. So it's made in a factory that has expensive equipment and it has people working there. And it has a boss that needs to make a profit. Then it has to be shipped to Germany, to a warehouse. There's some people working there with a forklift, pulling things, filling orders. It has to be shipped to me. Those people have to make a living. And then the people that own the company, and let's assume the owner is maybe the designer, or he hired a designer, they have to make a living. So if I can buy it for 100 euros, and the 29 euros on top going to the government, that's taxes, how much the hell did it actually cost to make this at the very beginning? Was all of these different shipping costs and profit costs and operational costs and labor fees in between? 10 euros?
I would say 20, maybe. I don't know. But excuse me, sorry. This is a conversation that we can't have about general hi-fi products without upsetting dealers and distributors around the world. Because the last time I tried to have this on Facebook years ago, I got a lot of very angry messages from dealers saying, why are you pulling the covers off the pricing model under which we operate, right? So I'm not prepared to do that because I don't want to piss anybody off I just don't want to get a load of hate mail, basically.
Right.
But that doesn't stop other people asking those questions, and I'm not saying it's unreasonable either. I'm not saying that a distributor shouldn't make money and a dealer shouldn't make money, but all of those extra stops in the supply chain add an extra chunk of money onto the retail price.
Has to.
I mean, this FitUEyes rack is probably sort of pseudo-direct, isn't it? It's warehoused around the world in different places, but it's still shipped effectively via Amazon, or the Amazon takes the order and it's shipped from a warehouse. So that there's no way you can go and look at this before you buy it.
Exactly. You can't.
Well,
so they're direct sales, but they're not factory direct. So let's say they're made in China, but they come from a warehouse in Europe. This is a very big company, this FitUEyes, because on their website they claim 10 million units sold. Not just this unit. They make lots of TV stands and other things. But if that is actually true, and if it's also true that in different countries that they have different order fulfillment centers, so that if you're in the US, your order doesn't get shipped from Germany. It's going to get shipped from some warehouse in Boca Raton or wherever. Right? This is a big outfit.
I think so. Well, I know it's a big outfit because I know that they're going to be showing at IFA in Berlin at the start of September. And ordinarily I would go and say hello, but I don't go to, as you know, I don't go to shows anymore. So I'm certainly not going to make a liar out of myself by going to IFA in the first week of September. But they will be there. So I guess if anybody's really curious, they can go to Berlin and ask FitUEyes, where they make their stuff and how they're selling it for, I would say, close to bargain basement pricing.
Well, I think the pricing is very much like IKEA, right? It's IKEA level. The product assembles, it flat packs, it's engineered to flat pack, it's made out of cheap but solid materials, and it's made in bulk. Now, I do not know where IKEA makes most of their stuff, but I don't think it's all made in Sweden.
No, but I would say IKEA stuff is generally a little bit more expensive than this, and probably because they have stores and
they have stores, yes, obviously, yeah.
But people can. I don't know. It's one of those things where you can buy it and just try it, and if you don't like it, you send it back to Amazon. It would be a pain for something like this because you'd have to disassemble it, put it back in the box. That's a major pain in the butt. But I don't know. I thought it was a great looking piece for not very much money.
Yeah, and I was surprised that they have this many models already in their catalog, and I had never heard of them before. So how long have they actually been in business? I have absolutely no idea. I've never come across them before.
Did you see their speaker stands?
Yes.
Absolutely wild.
Completely wonky. But then I also saw their television stands. And I never had the idea, which they show in like a video that they made, which of course is populated with young, attractive people, right? But they come. There's a couple going to a friend's place. They meet in the kitchen. It's a beautiful day outside. They decide to eat outdoors, and they bring their television outdoors into the yard. And they do it on one of their stands, which is like a tripod.
Yeah.
And I think this one might have had wheels. So I would have never thought of bringing a television from indoors into a backyard, but this must be a new thing.
Yeah, people do that, I think. Well, in warmer countries, they do that for sure. They don't do it in Germany so much. They do it with projectors and beamers. And they also do a rack that has some vinyl storage built in. On the top two shelves, effectively, are vinyl storage. Well, the top shelf is still laid bare. Sorry, the shelves 2 and 3 are carved out for, 50 records, 60 records, something like that. And that looks quite good as well. I mean, the industrial... Yeah.
They have a version of what we're talking about with doors, with glass doors. That's now sold out, but they still show it. So I would assume that it's going to come back. So if somebody wants an enclosed system, they have that as well.
Yeah. I'm going to take up the mantle here, Srajan.
By all means.
I would like to talk about something from Bluesound, which really surprised me, actually, because it's a new power node. Most people, I think, know what the power node is. If you don't, it's like a shoebox type streaming amplifier that runs BlueOS, but therefore it also does Spotify Connect, Tidal Connect, AirPlay 2, Rune Ready. I think it does Cobas Connect now. And there's like a touch plate on the top for volume and basic play pause and Red Hot Chili Peppers button and things like that. And then there's some wired connectivity in the back. What I love about the power nodes actually is that they have good bass management. They do the high pass filtering, I believe. It's been a long time since I looked at one, but it definitely low pass is the sub. I'm pretty sure it high pass is the mains as well. So it's an all-in-one unit for like somebody with a pair of two-way stand mounts and a sub. It does not have the time delay aspect, but maybe they could add that. I don't know. But what's interesting about this 2025 power node is that they've added a third pair of binding posts at the back, so you can connect a center channel, right? Oh. So then you've got 3.1. So you've got left, right, center, subwoofer 3.1. So now what's missing from the picture are your surrounds, and the new 2025 power node can wirelessly stream to a pair of Bluesound's, I think they're called Pulse Flex. So little sort of, they look like Sonos One type speakers. I'm sure Bluesound wouldn't want me making that comparison, but that's what they look like. But they can sit, behind your couch, and I think the Wi-Fi connection between the amp and those two speakers is a proprietary link. Oh, I've got it written here. It's called a BlueOS bonded speaker link. So you don't need to worry about cabling to your ears. And I thought this was really cool. Like the whole thing, you get 100 watts per channel into 8 ohms if you just use it as a stereo amp. But if you're using the center channel as well, you get 80 watts per channel, which is still not too bad. You can put DRAC into this system, but I think it only works with 2 channel, maybe 2.1. But I don't know whether this does DRAC live bass control. I guess it doesn't, but I don't know. But I thought, the 3.1 aspect I thought was really quite interesting. So you could have a 5.1 surround setup. So with the amp, it sells for 1,099 euros or $1,200 US. So you've got that, and then the little pulse flexes are a few $100. So yeah, you could have the whole shebang, everything, including your sub, for $3,000, say. And I think that would be extremely potent in terms of sound. And then I would assume then that the HDMI support on the back of the Bluesound also does some kind of, it supports Dolby Surround. So it's not just faking the rear channels, it's actually proper rear channel support that comes from the stream. And if I sound vague on that, it's because I don't normally do home theater stuff. So this is right on the edge of where my kind of understanding of things sort of tops out. But, there's a headphone socket on this as well. So yes, Srajan, that's a lot I've just hit you with. Any questions?
No, I'm unfamiliar with this particular level of product. So, in your experience, where would you slot the power node in versus things like Eversolo or NAD or Cambridge or Rotel?
Well, this is a streaming amplifier, so it's probably closest to something like the Eversolo Play, which is more affordable than this, but doesn't do the third center channel. It's probably comparable to the WIM Ultra Amp or Amp Ultra, which is actually behind me right there. So it's probably in that vein because it is an amplifier. It's a streaming amplifier. So it's nothing like the Eversolo streaming DACs. That would be closer to say the Bluesound node itself, not the power node. So the power node has obviously an amplifier inside. I think actually they changed this up as well because the power node used to be let's call it traditional class D, right?
Okay.
So you'd have a DAC in the middle of a circuit. This one doesn't. They're using a direct digital amplifier inside this new power node, and it has GaN FETs on the output stage. So that seems to be becoming the new thing to have, right? Because they have a faster switching speed apparently. So, I mean, my experience with direct digital amplifiers has been extremely positive. I mean, Lingdorf do them, Peachtree have done one. There's some in the JBL speakers which are kind of close to me here. So they seem to be becoming more and more popular. There's another product. Oh yeah, inside the Technics streaming active speakers, and before that, the big Technics amplifier is also direct digital. So I think the pedigree of that type of amplification is proven, and probably a little bit more advanced than say what you'd find in the Eversolo Play or the WIM Amp Ultra. But I say advanced. I mean, maybe it's not. Maybe they're better in other ways. I don't know. I haven't heard them really. So, but I love the idea of this just being a sort of almost like a home theater in a box that sort of bleeds into the hi-fi world, but not entirely. And it's a good evolution of this product line. I think it's pretty solid, and it's quite timely to mention it now because even though this was announced a while back, it's not shipping until next week.
Well, I'm not at all a home theater guy. And I've never understood the need for a center channel if you have properly set up good stereo speakers. But then at the most, our family was like, my wife and I, not like 4 or 5 people on a broad couch where the one that sits on the outside, the whole center image is now shifted to the outside of a television. So I can see why you would need a center channel there. But the rear channels for somebody like myself who has always been renting, they were always completely off the reservation because the cable you have to run, you don't have in-wall cabling. That was always, it took the whole thing off the table. But if you can do it wireless, like you say, there's like one hurdle removed.
One major hurdle, yes.
One major hurdle.
Yeah, I mean, you still have to run power to those surrounds, so you still got to find a way to do that. Yeah. But it's always difficult. I think that's that's the biggest hurdle for any kind of home theater system is cabling in speakers behind you, and then if you've got an Atmos system above you, goodness me, it's still too much.
All right, so we're going to be on speakers now. And so yesterday, literally the day before we're taping this, just before I'm about to log off in the evening, I get an email from Dr. Marek, and it says, we've just increased your IQ allocation. Do you want it? Now I thought to myself, I'm already so smart. Do I want to be any smarter? I won't have anybody to talk to anymore. What's my favorite loudspeaker? Do you know?
Oh, goodness me. No, I've got no idea. Cube Audio? No, I don't know. I don't know.
What's in my main system? Do you know that?
It's always changing, Srajan. Isn't it? Isn't the one with the glass-mounted ribbon tweeter at the front, right?
Exactly. Do you know what it is? What it's called?
I've forgotten. I'm sorry.
Okay, you were not far off with Cube because this is sort of the sister brand to Cube called Qualio Audio.
That's right, Qualio. Yeah.
And so the speakers that I have are called the IQ. And basically what it is a bass bin with a port in the back and a 9.5-inch SB Acoustics Satori, very, very high quality woofer. Okay. And on top of that is a thin sheet of plexiglass or acrylic, like an open baffle. And you have an SB Acoustics 6-inch Satori mid-range. And on top of that, you have a short Mundorf air motion transformer. That's that pleated accordion type tweeter, right? And those two units on the top sit on an open baffle, so they're free in the back. Okay? 6,900 euros for the base configuration. Now, in the last month or so, I gave away 6 amplifiers and 7 pair of speakers and 2 DACs.
Huh.
And amongst the speakers I gave away were things like audiophysic codecs, German Physic HRS 120, things that were bigger and more expensive than these Qualios. The reason I kept the Qualio is because that's my favorite speaker ever that I can afford that works in my room.
Sure.
Well, they're coming out with a new one.
Just to fuck with you.
This one is called the IQ30. And now what do we think that 30 might stand for? If we remember that they're from Poland, and Poland is on the metric system. They're not on inches.
So it'll be 30 centimeter driver?
Exactly. And what would that be the equivalent to in inches? Do you have any idea?
12?
Correct. So now we're going from a 9.5-inch woofer to a 12-inch woofer. We're going from a 6-inch mid-range to a 7.5-inch mid-range. And we are going from the small Mundorf air motion transformer to the big one. And the box goes 50 centimeters in width, 30 centimeters, 35 in depth, and the whole thing tops out at 110 centimeters. Don't know squat about the crossover yet. Don't know squat about the pricing yet. They will ship me a pair at the end of the month, supposedly. We do know that they ship in 2 separate crates. Very important for me, because if they both came in one crate, I'd be out. I couldn't store the bloody thing, and I couldn't even get it through the front door. And I can't unbox outdoors.
Sure.
And the weight in the crate is 70 kilos. So I would assume that's probably 50 kilos per speaker. They're telling me that the crossover components are going to be Elite, Mundorf, and Janssen. And even the hookup wiring is going to be Mundorf silver, gold, copper, called Angelique. No idea on price yet. But if the other one is 6,900, we can probably figure it's going to be above 10K. Somewhere between 10 and 12, below 15, I would assume.
Right.
It's like their new flagship.
Yeah.
And it's called the Qualio IQ30. And that's all I got on that one.
Well, then that's back to me, and I've got another very small, small Chinese product again. This is quite an unusual one, actually, because I remember when I started in hi-fi in 2010, these kinds of products were very, very fashionable. And I'm talking about the USB SPDIF converters. So USB signal goes in, and then coax generally comes out. I was trying to think of the name of the product that was so popular in about 2011, 2012. It was a little red thing, and there was a second version that wasn't red, and it came in a little mini suitcase. And it actually, the coax
wasn't there the Dragonfly, and then there was the M2 Tech?
So the Dragonfly is a DAC, so that's not part of this conversation.
The M2 Tech.
There was an M2 Tech one, but it's not that. It wasn't called the Audiophiliac, but it was something like that.
Oh,
anyway,
yeah, I remember. I had one of them.
Yeah, and but it bolted directly onto the coax socket. Correct. So the coax socket would have to support its weight, right? And that was my first experience with a USB SPDIF converter. And it was pretty potent, actually, because I was like, what? You mean that not all digital sounds the same? So anyway, but they can also be useful for people that have got a USB output on their source device, but not a USB input on their DAC, and they've only got coax or Toslink, right? So just like a format conversion. And that problem is especially acute for people using a phone as a source. I know it's not very common, but some people do it. Same with a tablet. So Hiby, Hiby, I think that's how you say it. They normally make very affordable, more affordable portable players. But this year they've introduced, I think it's this year they've introduced it, something called the UC10, which is a USB splitter converter for a smartphone or a tablet. Obviously it can be used with a PC or Mac. So it's like a little dongle. So it looks like a dongle DAC, but it's not. So it's USB in and then coax out. So obviously that's useful if you want to connect your phone to your DAC and your DAC doesn't have a USB input. It's only got coax on it or Toslink. It's no good if you've got Toslink, right? But it's also got a little display on the front, this UC10, that tells you what's coming in, what kind of signal is coming in. Now that's useful to know if you're, say, if you're using an Android phone, you want to know if your operating system is resampling all the audio to 48 kilohertz, because this UC10 will tell you what's coming in, because very often it's hard to find DACs that will tell you that information.
Now, does this device need or use a cable, or is there like a male USB connector that plugs straight into your phone?
It's USB powered. So it's a bit like a dongle DAC that plugs straight into your phone, but it's not a DAC, it's a DDC.
Right. Okay.
Right, so it gets its power from the bus. So I guess it's going to use, usually these things sort of sip on the host's power. So yes, there will be some impact on your phone or tablet, but it won't be huge, right? But these things, I think the tech has evolved that we've now got used to the idea of dongle DACs being a thing, and we can use them with our phone and they don't, if we take it on a train ride somewhere and we're 4 hours on the train, we're listening to music, our phone's battery won't be flat when we arrive.
Right.
So, but this is for home use, I think, really. And it's also obviously for reclocking if you think that maybe the clocking output on your phone is not great. So I think this is kind of a quirky niche product, but there is a catch to it. And that is that the SPDIF output is a 3.5mm socket, which is not very common. It's not your typical coax out socket. And there are a few products that have this kind of arrangement. So for example, if you want to go out of your phone into a Cord Mojo, but you want to go via this, you would need 3.5mm to connect to the UC10 and 3.5mm to connect to the Cord Mojo, because its coax input is also 3.5mm. I had a cable made for me.
Does such a cable come with when you buy this piece?
Yeah, so you can either choose a, I've got to get this, look at my cheat sheet here. You can either have a 3.5mm to 3.5mm SPDIF, but that's an extra $10. Or there's a 3.5mm to traditional coax socket cable, again an extra $10. But the unit itself is only $29.
Huh.
So I'm not saying it's going to transform the sound of your phone or your tablet as a digital source. It might do. I don't know. I guess it depends upon your own implementation. But I think it's quite a useful little widget to have around. I certainly would use it if I was doing a video, say, about Apple Music and what's coming out of an iPad. I would want to show that, I've selected a 192 file on Apple Music. Is that coming out of the USB socket into my DAC, right? And this little Hiby UC10 would show me that.
Well, I would call it a problem solver. This is the kind of product that solves the problem. When, like you said before, you have a USB output, but you don't have a USB input on the other end.
Right.
How do you bridge the two? This
Yeah.
one fixes it. And it doesn't necessarily make any pretensions at improving the sound, though it might, but primarily it solves the problem, right?
Exactly. I mean, Hiby have said nothing about sound quality changes or anything like that. I think it does some resampling as well. So you can downsample DSD to PCM 192. I'm not too sure. I'm a bit hazy on what it does DSD wise. I think maybe it just downsamples everything to 192. Oh no, that's not true. Not true, because my notes say that it does DSD 64 over DOP. I'm not a DSD expert because I don't really use it, so it's not my sort of field of expertise. But I guess if you really want to know, you can look at Hiby's website. We'll put links in the show notes below for that so people can check it out. But again, I just think it's another smart, affordable, as you say, problem-solving product from China.
Okay, I'll pick up on that because I'm going to a brand that is also known to be a problem solver. But before I go there, an anecdote that actually led me to this particular product.
Mm-hmm.
So just a few weeks ago, I don't know whether Mercury was retrograde or one of my moons was out of alignment, but there I am on my desktop, and my USB bridge that connects the DAC to the computer stops outputting signal.
Huh.
I'm on the Windows 11 computer. I can see that there's signal going out of the computer, but the DAC doesn't lock.
Huh.
Now, a USB bridge is like a hub.
Yeah.
The computer doesn't see it. The computer looks right through it, and it sees what's connected to your hub or your USB bridge, which is the DAC. Never happened before. You know, I power things down, I mess around with the cables, nothing works that day. The USB bridge might be broken, I take it out, replace it with another one. That doesn't work either. I say, Bafangul, or whatever. And now,
as you do.
I connect the USB cable directly to my DAC. Sound, everything is peachy. I do my work, which means on the computer that, like you, or like most people working on a computer, you have lots of different programs running at the same time, drawing on the PCU, the CPU. And then I'm listening to music in Cobus. And I'm listening to music and I open up a file in Photoshop and suddenly I have interruptions and dropouts in the music, which never, ever happens with my USB bridge. But now with the direct connection of computer to USB input on the DAC, doing some data-intensive work, you know, Photoshop, big file, I have this dropout interruption. Eventually that goes away. I go onto the internet and I'm opening up YouTube and I get the same problem. I get dropouts and distortion. Which now reminds me that even though we are all fond of saying that USB has this error correction and, you know, it's sending multiple packages, etc., so you can't really improve it, well, it's actually not true. And that the USB tree connects different peripherals. And depending on what the different things that are hanging off your USB tree are doing, it's pulling resources. And so if you're running multiple parallel processors, they can affect each other. And USB does not communicate with your CPU directly. There's layers of software and drivers and operating systems in between. That's the reason why the designer at Sengran introduced a new audio interface that completely bypasses USB and replaced it with CPIE, which gives you a direct hardware connection from your CPU to the task that you want to do.
Okay.
Okay. Well, in any event, I realized that something seems to be wrong with my USB bridge. I may have to buy a new one. I'm hoping that Mercury is going to reset, and the next day it does, and suddenly everything is working fine again, right? But that day, I go to Hifi because it's a company that has a lot of problem solvers. You know, you have a ground loop, they have a ground loop eliminator. You have DC on the AC, they have a DC blocker. Your USB is screwed up, they have a USB decrapifier. What do they have for this? Okay, and so they have a product called the Omni USB. Retails for $8.99. So this SilentPower Omni USB is a 2-box system. The first box is the same as the media converter. You go in RJ45 from your router, Ethernet cable. You go out, fiber optics. Now you go into the bigger box. You go in fiber optics.
Yep.
And you go out USB C,
or coax,
USB B, or coax, or toslink. So if you use it as a DDC, you come in Ethernet and you go out coax or toslink. Now it's a digital to digital converter. But if you come in fiber optics and you go out USB, you don't really convert. Now, it has 2 fiber optic ports. And I had to ask because I didn't know the difference. One is at 1.25 gigahertz and one is at 10 gigahertz. And I said, well, for audio, which one should I use? And I was told that 1.25 gigahertz is for USB 2, which is the standard audio. And the 10 gigahertz is for USB 3.0 or 3.2, which is good up to 10 gigahertz. And that you would want to use for video. So if you want high resolution, well, I don't know whether you can do high resolution YouTube, but you could certainly pull down high resolution video off the cloud to watch, and you would want an interface that can carry that without distortion.
Okay.
Now, I asked for one of these for review, and I had already written a 3-page intro. When I think to myself, well, let me go to the owner's manual just to be sure. I go to the owner's manual, and we're now going to show this page from it where you see under number 3 something that's called Nexus App Connection.
Oh, no.
Now, what does that tell us?
Well, it tells us there's probably a Wi-Fi connection to it, and you're going to use an app.
Exactly.
Which
now,
you
why
don't do.
the hell would you need an app for something that goes between your router and your DAC? What would you need an app for?
For configuration, for routing?
They use the app so that you can sit in the seat and look at your smartphone and see which ones of the different ports that they have is active, how much power it draws, and what the status is of the battery, because this thing is battery powered.
Okay.
Now, you can also read all of that on the front display. But if that item is in the shelf and you're sitting too far away and you're a nerd that needs to know what your battery charge is, you can now have that on the app. But nowhere on the product page does it say that it's Wi-Fi and Bluetooth based and that Wi-Fi and Bluetooth is always on. So when I see this and I said, oh no, this is another one of those Hi-Fi products that's running Wi-Fi 24/7 and it's not advertising it. I asked my contact in the UK, Karina, and she went to tech support and she came back and she said, yes, there's Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, they're always on.
Right.
I said, well, sorry, then I can't review it. I get headaches from that.
Yeah.
I said, isn't there a way to turn it off?
No.
She said, well, let me check with tech support. And I'm not lying. Yesterday, I get an email, and this is what it says. Karina, this is the note I just got from tech support. We confirm that this function will be added. Based on our schedule, the modification of Omni USB will be prioritized for completion by August 25th, and the remaining products updated as synchronously as possible within a week thereafter. So maybe because I'm a big fish in a very tiny pond, because I bitched about it, I don't know whether they would respond like that to just the average consumer. But not only will they now make Wi-Fi and Bluetooth defeatable on this device, they will apparently do it across their entire lineup. And I need to really give props to their engineering department that even though at first they snuck in this feature, which for this particular product is really not necessary. It's a convenience feature, but it's not the functional feature. For some other product, it may be necessary. But that they now actually took it upon themselves to say, okay, well, there's somebody giving us a good reason why he cannot use the product the way it is right now. And he's not the only one that's sensitive to Wi-Fi. Let's fix it. Luxon, by the way, did the same thing on the X9 review sample that they sent me. because that too had permanent Wi-Fi. And that is the DAC headphone amplifier. If you use it in that function, you don't need Wi-Fi. So the Wi-Fi should be defeatable, at least then.
Yeah.
And they agreed, and within a week, they sent me a firmware update, and it bypassed Wi-Fi, and now I can use the Luxem without getting a headache. I wanted to mention this not only as a shout-out to the Hifi/SilentPower engineering team, but also to let our audience know that some manufacturers are surprisingly responsive to consumer feedback. And if people are unhappy with products because it has features that they are missing, or something is not working the way that they expected, or there's something that they actually literally don't like and that prevents them from using the product, do contact the manufacturer. Explain that you would buy it if this thing was fixed. And you might be surprised if it's within their realm of possibility, they might address it.
Well, especially if it's software fixable. Obviously, if it's a hardware swap out, then there's just a no-go. Unless they introduce, maybe a version 2 would do that. But yeah, I guess this speaks to my earlier point about a lot of hi-fi now becoming computer-based. And these are computers, so you should be able to turn off the Wi-Fi, turn off the Bluetooth, not just for people like you who suffer health problems with it, but also for people who either just don't want it on for some kind of fundamental reason, or because they believe that having the Wi-Fi on and or the Bluetooth on negatively impacts sound quality. They may or may not be right, but they can try it out.
I do.
Right.
But the thing that I personally do not understand is that we're talking about EMI, pollution, electromagnetic interference, RF, radio frequency interference, shielding cables, right? Putting electronics in shielded cases. And then we're running Wi-Fi. Now, what is Wi-Fi? It's ultra high frequency radiation. And what is that? It's noise. So how can we promote high-end audio and shielding it from external distortion and influences and interferences, and at the same time promote Wi-Fi being built into a product, not advertising the fact, and then leaving it on 24/7. And I would also tell our audience that even if you don't believe that Wi-Fi exposure radiation can somehow affect the sound, and it also doesn't affect you, if you have the ability to turn off Wi-Fi at least during the night, like if your router, for example, is always set to Wi-Fi, but you can go there in the evening and just switch off the Wi-Fi, in the morning turn it back on. Try it out for a week and see whether you don't sleep better. And whether when you wake up, you don't feel more energized, because it's very possible that you realize that you are actually sensitive. You may not get my headaches, sort of this brain fog, but you may feel that I feel more re-energized after sleeping when the Wi-Fi is not on 24/7. I only turn it on when I need it. And now I'm done with weird stuff.
Until the next time, Srajan.
But for those feline fanciers on the channel that have wanted to catch a glimpse of the ever elusive Chai Baba, my cat, the other day he sat still in the office and I took a photo and I sent it to you.
Okay.
So people can finally see what he actually looks like.
Right, because he's been very quiet today.
Yep, he's sleeping right over there.
Ah. Cool. All right. Well, I can take my tinfoil hat off now, Srajan, and we can wrap this episode up. Yeah, all I want to say is just thank you very much for your time today.
You're welcome, and have a good time in Portugal.
Thank you. I will do.